Zacks Rank Buys, stocks with a short-term buy or strong buy recommendation. Now, here are more Zacks Rank Buys. Time for more value stocks with Tracy Reinick, our value stock analyst at Zacks.com, who today is going to talk about one newer one that I haven't heard of before and one that I have heard of in the recent past. The first one, PRXL International, I believe, is how it's pronounced. PRXL, the ticker symbol. What do they do?
They are a business consulting company for drug companies and medical device companies. They basically help companies go through the stages of like clinical trials and getting a drug or a medical device up through experimental stages through, the regulatory system. So, right now they're doing okay. That business hasn't really changed. They had a good quarter last quarter. They've beaten 4 quarters in a row. Revenue was up. They have a decent backlog of about 13%. So the backlog, the backlog increased 13% last quarter to about $2 billion.
Is that good?
Yes, yeah, that's stuff coming down the pike. They had they had a little bit of problems in the quarter because one of their big clients went bankrupt. So they did take a little bit of a charge in the quarter, but if you take that out, it's it was a good quarter for them. So yeah, I mean they're seeing some new business coming in.
So when you say backlog, it's like backlog of money yet to come in.
New contracts and things like that are coming down the pike and that haven't been paid for yet.
My problem exactly.
I know. So they were Zacks number 1 when I talked about them last week. They now come down to number 2. But estimates are holding at about 23 cents a share for the quarter, this next quarter, and about 96 for the year, which is in line with their guidance that they gave. So, the analysts are just kind of waiting to see what happens when they report, which I believe is supposed to be, this month on April 28th. So they're coming down the pike. Now, the chart on them is similar to what we've seen many times that we've talked about. They sold off in November, and that's when they hit their low of around $6.11. And then they bounced off a little bit off the low, but they haven't seen a huge upward trend like a lot of companies have. But, they're up 20, 30% off that low, so it's altogether not that bad.
All right, and then there is Almost Family Incorporated, AFAM, the ticker symbol, providers of home health care, correct?
Yes. Exactly. They do home health care, rehabilitation services, personal care, mainly for elderly, but it can be anyone who needs those kinds of, things done at their home. And this business has been really, really good for a lot of these companies that do this kind of service. They operate in 11 states, but, they're seeing a big uptick in the visiting nursing home health care segment of their business model. And that was up in the last quarter about 108%. So
even with the recession?
Yes, yeah, because people still need these services, and it's still expanding. They're still seeing a lot of growth in that area.
Being able to afford them is what surprises me.
Well, right, and some of the reasons that we've seen with the actual stock, the share price of this company, it's stayed actually higher than a lot of the other stocks have over the last couple of months because the healthcare did better overall. But after Obama got into office, there have been some questions about
the future of healthcare.
Yeah, and what's going to happen with Medicaid and Medicare, and sometimes some of these kinds of home visits are covered under some of those plans. So I think the stock sold off a bit in the last couple weeks before this big rally, leading into the rally. And it got quite affordable considering its underlying numbers. I mean, the company itself hasn't said there's any change in what they're seeing as far as revenues and stuff because nothing has changed yet. It's just the fear that something might change.
I see.
So, but fundamentally, there's a Zacks number 1 rank. The estimates are rising. They have beat 4 quarters in a row. When I last talked about them, last week, they were Zacks number 1. They still are Zacks number 1, and estimates are rising, if I said that already. But yeah, I mean, their fundamentals are good. They were about 6 times earnings last week, and then they had a big jump in the last couple sessions, and now they're trading about 9 times earnings, which is still pretty cheap for a stock in this sector with a low PEG ratio, too, because their growth is high. But as I said, we talked about the chart. So their chart is a little different than what we've talked about before because they didn't see the November sell-off, but they did leading up to around November 9th when they hit a low of around $14, and then they have bounced quite considerably off of that.
All right. Do you own either of these two?
I do not.
All right. If you want to read more about the value stocks Tracy has her eye on, go to Zacks.com. Take a look in the upper right-hand corner of our homepage. That's where all the Zacks Rank buys are listed. And next to the value category is the headline of her most recent story stock. You can click on it. It'll take you to that, and then an archive of some others that she's written about recently. With Tracy Reinick, I'm Terry Ruffalo.